There have been a lot of changes and upgrades to the Mark 7 Apex 10 reloading press, so we thought it'd be time to give you an overall update. Hey guys, Gavin Gear and Kyle Shields here for UltimateReloader.com. We have done a ton with the Mark 7 Apex 10.
Oh yeah, it's a lot.
It started out manual, and that was me. I don't think you've ever run the machine manual, have you?
No, not till auto drive.
Yep.
No,
So by default, the machine comes with a hand crank. We've done manual, we've done auto drive, we've done the complete process of installing the auto drive, adding a bunch of sensors, we've loaded rifle ammo, pistol ammo, we've bulk processed over 40,000 rounds of 223 brass. This machine has been through a lot and it's held up really well. And this is actually one of the very first units that came off the production line.
that's right. Yeah.
So, you know, we had a few issues with things like the priming system, which have been completely updated from Mark 7, and so that's a part of the overall upgrade. So let's talk about what's available for the press. We've got sensors, right? We've got swage sense, powder check, decap sense, bullet sense, primer orientation. I believe we've covered all those here on the channel. Yep. One of the techs, John Vlieger, came and we did a whole video series that you're going to want to check out if you're thinking about buying this press or have already bought it and want to know about those sensors and other maintenance issues. Also, upgrades. So, you know, the auto drive is one of the most notable things. And the auto drive is awesome. Not only does it run the press for you, but it has torque sense, it has the digital clutch, it has a bunch of different speeds that you can run it at, different top and bottom dwell settings, which you've probably used quite a bit when we've done things like trimming and that kind of thing.
I have, yeah. Whatever situation you have helps dial that stuff in. So we'll get to it in a minute, but for now, I've actually turned a lot of the bottom dwell and stuff off for our priming. So
yeah,
it's kind of situational, and it's really easy to change on the screen, even on the fly while it's running. So.
Yeah, if you're doing powder charging and if you're trimming, there's obvious concerns there about, you know, leaving the powder enough time to drop or having the right speed for trimming, that sort of thing.
Right.
We've also got Primer Express, right, which we're going to be doing a dedicated video on as a follow-up to this video. That's going to collate primers and feed them into the machine. We've got digital powder measure, the trimmer kit, which we've shown, and caliber conversion kits, of course. Different shell plates, different case feed adapter parts, additional tool heads, and so on and so forth. So in terms of upgrades and accessories, that's kind of the current list. But there have been some changes. One of the changes with the Apex 10, there's really two things, right? The Gen 2 priming system, and they've gone back to a billet aluminum tool head. Now, if you remember, when we first used the machine, it had a black anodized billet aluminum tool head, and they went to a cast iron model. And people said, oh, well, you know, we kind of prefer the aluminum model. And so Mark 7 does a good job listening to their customers. It's back, and it's also now available in thread, silver, black, and gold. I kind of like the idea of the gold one, personally.
I like it for, you know, a visual representation of different calibers or whatnot. Without, you know, you could label it, of course, but it's kind of a neat way, you know, to add some flair. We have the original here that we used for our brass processing. It held up great, but I was fooled. I had to ask Gavin. I thought this was like an upgrade. I didn't know they originally offered this because I like the look of the billet. Much better. I mean, they're both fine operationally, but this looks nice. You gotta admit.
I think red is a good choice. I was talking at one point with the founder of MakerBot, the 3D printer company.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And he said there's other than black and white, what color combos are there, right?
It's a good point.
Black, white, and red. It is the color combo, right?
It is. It does look nice, too.
Yeah. So one of the things you've been focused on recently was to upgrade to the Gen 2 priming system. Let's talk about what the changes are and what that process looked like to install it.
Yeah, so installation was pretty simple. First and foremost, we haven't really touched this since our brass processing yet, so I wanted to tear everything down and give it a good clean, which I did. So tore down the press, cleaned it up, got it all spiffied up, relubricated everything, the shell plate and all that. And during that process was the time to install our Gen 2 priming system. So we have the Gen 1 here, and they've made some changes, which we'll get to in a second. But installing the Gen 2 priming system was really easy. We replaced it with, we were using the primer block for our
Oh,
brass
that's right.
processing.
So we're priming, obviously, doing that.
Yeah, so as you can see, this has a little bit of wear on it, but it held up really, really well for 40,000 plus rounds. So it's basically a drop-in. So these pieces are intercompatible with one another, essentially with the press itself. It's all designed for the press, of course. So you just drop the whole unit in and bolt it down. Really as simple as that. So since I haven't messed with the Gen 2 priming yet, I was pretty anxious to give it a try after getting everything up and running to see how it worked.
Yep.
But it was one of those things where overall it was really, really simple to install, because once you get everything cinched back down, you get your shell plate on, you reverse the process of your teardown. That's kind of it. I didn't have to make any adjustments or anything to get it running. It just worked right out of the gate as it was. And again, they made some changes which are really nice to the Gen 2. So, but yeah, overall installation was very, very straightforward.
So pretty much the same operating principle. You've got a rotating shuttle, right? Kind of a nice design mechanically. Some of the changes, fully CNC machined, anodized finish gives it a slickness and a surface quality that's easily cleaned and probably less prone to wear, right? Anodizing is super, super hard. I can't remember what the Rockwell hardness is on that. And they made the removal of the primer disc easier, right? And this top cover can come off without removing the shell plate. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah, you just, I haven't needed to do it yet, but you can simply just pop out, open this window here, and you can use these screws. And you can also deactivate your priming temporarily, which I did do during testing by undoing one screw here and just swinging it over. There's even a spot for that same screw to, you tighten down the screw to basically disable it. So if you want to run your press through or, work on something or update something, you can easily turn off your priming, so to speak. So that's really handy as well.
Yeah, and it's obvious that the people at Mark 7 use their own products. Have you ever gotten a product out of the box, assembled it, and tried to use it? And it's just clearly evident that there's no one person at the company that manufactures the product that read the instructions, unpacked everything, and actually tried to use it. It's like, well, this is an obvious problem. Well, they added a compressed air cleaning port, right?
Yeah,
Someone was probably loading millions of rounds. And or a customer talked to them about, hey, this keeps getting dirty. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to clean it with compressed air? And they can make that design change.
Yeah, which obviously I did a lot with our brass processing, even though we weren't priming. But it's a similar thing. You're blowing compressed air in various spots to keep things very tidy, keep all the tumbling media out or any of the gunk and grime from range pickup brass. So. Yeah, it's nice that they added that with priming as well, because that does become an issue with any priming system.
If a priming system is clean, it'll probably work. And so I love the fact that you've been so studious about taking the machine apart, not just trying to clean it in place, but really taking it apart and cleaning it. Because much like a firearm that's completely gunked up with carbon and old hardened grease and all that, maybe the bore's got copper fouling and a copper or a carbon ring in the throat area, just a good cleaning can alleviate a ton of problems, and regular maintenance will obviously extend the life of any machine.
Little goes a long way.
Yeah.
Sure, little maintenance.
The load plate is now all metal. The load plate is the curved plate where the primers swing across their arc and it helps guide their path.
Right there. That's the original, kind of made of plastic, so now that's metal.
Yep. And then end stop adjustment now uses a locking helicoil. Can you describe what that means exactly?
Yeah, so I'll get a close-up for you, but right here, there's helicoil screws instead of nuts.
With the lock nut,
yeah, correct. So instead of having to use these, you just can loosen or tighten a screw.
And they kind of stay in place.
And they stay in place.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's a nice little update. It's all this is really just refinements to the system, which just makes it much more polished. And this one's fine, but you got to admit that the Gen 2 looks a lot better being billeted and CNC'd, which is fine. But yeah, it looks nice.
It's also evidence of the modular design of the press, right? The fact that this priming system essentially is a drop-in component means that you can very easily upgrade your priming system without having to change out the entire frame of the press, for instance, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and one extra thing to note as well is you can send in your old unit, your Gen 1, for credit for a Gen 2
as
well.
Nice.
So that's a nice addition if you're willing to upgrade and if this is something you want to do.
Cool. Okay, so here's what I'm going to suggest we do next, and this is really a preview of what's to come. We did a whole bunch of brass processing, 41,000 plus rounds.
Yeah.
And what we learned talking with people like Michael Halleck from Vantage Research was a lot of people will actually do hyper bulk loading in 3 phases. You've got the prep, right? You've got brass shavings, you've got brass lube, you've got swaging going on, and then they'll actually do dedicated priming. Dump all the cases in, run it through. Why? Because priming is probably the most tricky and error-prone process of the entire loading sequence.
Oh yeah.
So if you can isolate the priming, you're not going to have powder mixing in with priming components, jamming things up, and if there are any issues, they're more easily identified and it doesn't stop an entire loading cycle, right? You've got all these cases in there. You might need to take 5 or 6 cases out that are partially loaded, maybe just toss them in the trash because that might be the most efficient thing to do
sometimes,
rather than to reuse them. So all that to say, we're going to do a complete dedicated priming pass that would mimic what professional reloading companies, these mid-level reloading companies, are going to do with equipment like this. And then to add Primer Express as kind of a second step. So why don't we transition now to that demo? All right, so we got some cases from our bulk 223 loaded in the case feeder. Why don't we start things out?
Let's run it.
At a conservative 1,000 cycles per hour?
Right, that's correct. Pretty slow. In my very quick testing, I did push this up to 2,000 and everything was working just fine, but it was just for a few rounds. So, as mentioned earlier, on the setup side, we've got no slowdown, so that's bottom slowdown is minimum, and everything else on dwells are at 0.
Nice.
So, since we're not charging any powder or anything like that, we don't really need for anything to slow down because we're not worried about spillage.
Let's crank it up.
So let's go up to, let's just send it to 2,000.
Nice.
Another thing we got going on here, as you probably see, we got the dynamic hold down making an appearance again. I used the same setup as we did with prime time, so used his little cup to set the priming seating depth, so real easy. Very nice.
That looks good, nice below flush.
Yeah. And it's been very consistent with this mixed head stamp brass so far. So all of it seems to be right at or right below flush.
Have you tried 2,500?
I have not.
Let's see what happens.
All right.
Hey!
Oh, wow. Yeah, first time seeing that. That is awesome. That is memorizing.
Looks like our priming setup is good to go.
It is.
So there we go. This is the latest and greatest Apex 10. If you do buy one, it's going to be just like this. It's available in a bundle with the auto drive or available in manual configuration, in which case you'll have a handle instead of the auto drive. This just in, guys. Now through October 31st, 2024, Mark 7 is running some awesome promos. Promo number 1, buy a manually driven press, the hand crank type. Get a free Pro Die set up to a $400 value. Buy an auto drive, get a sensor of your choice. That's about a $350 value. And then if you buy an auto driven bundle, you get 2 sensors for free, which is up to $700 bonus. So go over to Mark 7 Reloading now to take advantage of this deal. So we got more work to do though.
We do. Primer Express.
Primer Express, we're doing priming. It just makes sense that we're going to add Primer Express so that we can dump packets of primers in. It's going to auto-collate, feed into the machine. And then after we've primed a whole bunch of these bulk processed cases, I'd say let's do some bulk loading as well. And we'll do that without the priming, just like we had talked about.
Yeah, and on that note too, you'll see we're already somewhat low. So that would be a nice thing to avoid. No more filling primers manually through the tube. So Primer Express is going to be awesome for running at speeds like we just did there. So that'll be fun.
Yep, so our question to you is, are you running an Apex 10? Do you have the latest and greatest? Or are you planning to install some of these upgrades like the Gen 2 priming system? Drop a comment and let us know. Also, if you have feedback about the bulk processing series and the bulk priming, the other plans that we just outlined, we'd love to discuss that as well. And if you want to know more about the press, mark7reloading.com. Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, that concludes this video, and that means it's time to wrap it up. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, we're on Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, where we've got unrestricted content, and Instagram. Make sure to follow us on all those channels. Ultimate Reloader also has a commercial solutions division serving law enforcement, the military, and the gun industry. We have some unique capabilities, including a comprehensive suite of recoil testing and evaluation capabilities, trigger profiling, and more. If you're interested in custom rifles like what we build here on the channel or gunsmithing services, you're going to want to go to rifles.ultimatereloader.com and get on the wait list. Thanks again for watching.